right. So what we're going to do in this moment is discuss our intention of personal advocacy. When I say advocacy, I mean something like an assertion of power, often through voice, to demand what you need in order to live a happy, healthy life. When I was thinking about the structure and the process and organization for our initiative, I thought about high school. The idea has to do with classifications like a 4-year, 3-year vision, right? The first year emphasizes the freshman experience, is what I'll call it, right? And you remember high school, right? In order to be a freshman, all you had to do is show up. Now, showing up means learning how to put yourself in a position to listen and pay attention and engage when appropriate. But in order to upgrade, to change your classification, right, to get to the next level, you have to learn how to do certain things a certain way with a specific type of intention. And that's what we will be doing in the second and third years. But for the first year, we're just trying to teach people how to show up and be freshmen in this process. So freshman year is not an AIDS watch kind of thing or even a Basan kind of thing. It's more about basic life skill building and conscious raising, paying attention and being aware of the skill of advocacy, how others use the skill of advocacy, how the skill is used on you, and how you can use that skill not just for yourself but for your community. So I think the high school model is a perfect way to think about that. The kind of projects that I've done before with this model, I think, might shed light on what this could look like. I was a part of a program called I Advocate, and what we did in I Advocate was we met on a monthly basis to talk about how we had been advocates the previous month. It could be something formal or something casual, but the idea is in the course of your going, in the course of your living, you pay attention to your engagement with people and even institutions to a certain extent, right? In one instance, I remember someone talking about being in a barbershop and hearing a conversation come up about some group, maybe an LGBTQ group or issue. And ordinarily, whoever was speaking would just sit there and kind of listen passively and allow all kinds of things to be said. But they took advantage of the opportunity to engage and pushed back on the way the community was being represented in that conversation. So that's a basic act of advocacy. There's no press, there's no camera, there's no limelight, there's no greater incentive. It's just about paying attention to the opportunities we have in our daily life in order to speak up for ourselves and for people that we care about. Next year, and maybe even starting at the end of this year, I'd like to create a public-facing platform that will connect the general public, the public at large, Georgia at large, as a constituency to what advocacy looks like at a policy level. But for the first year, we're just highlighting the freshman experience. And so if we do any kind of platform this year, it will be internal to Thrive, and it will be about celebrating and giving attaboys to the people who've taken advantage of their space that they have in order to be advocates. So this year is all about weaving and integrating this engagement agenda into our current and ongoing internal Thrive programming. Just like with each individual year, we're going to try to weave the agenda of intentional advocacy among the people and the places that we're already dealing with, right? So that's kind of the overview. Eventually, we may decide to develop a formal structure for this part of the agenda, but in the meantime, I think it may be a good idea to try to take an informal poll or census or just gather data about where our community falls as it relates to advocacy. Some people already naturally engage, and others are interested but may not have the confidence or have the tools that they feel like they need to be effective. And so that's one of the things that we're going to accomplish this year. There are people already in our organization who we would consider to be seniors in engagement and advocacy, right? They don't need the prompt without ever having been told or even giving any particular skill. They advocate for themselves and for people they care about. That's just who they are in the universe, right? They advocate about everything at every opportunity. They never miss, right? So we're not going to focus our program on that aspect of our community. That's going to be, those people are going to kind of they don't really need the kind of help that we're offering at the basic level, right? From my experience, most people are aspiring freshmen, and so our philosophy is the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so we're going to focus on those people who need the most of our skills, and then everybody's going to benefit. Of course, again, the goal of this year is to inspire personal advocacy for community benefit in the local or state region as a lifestyle and in normal conversations. And so as a steering committee, we are fostering a programmatic intention within existing gathering communities, engaging and conversing with communities to regularly uplift our values as reminders of what is possible when we engaged. All right, we've mostly covered that already. The reason why we're approaching advocacy this way is because we want people to be able to feel their political power as citizens and residents of this country and state. We want them to be able to feel their constitutional power and be encouraged to engage in their fourth estate responsibility to maintain our existence through engagement and eventually hold their representatives, right, accountable. But that will be senior level stuff, right? So what we're doing in this process is beginning the process of finding freshmen in order to turn them into seniors. There are ways in which if we go about a more programmatic approach where we're just starting with introducing a curriculum, we could create some false positives, right? We could find some situations where we could collect data to say, hey, we had a webinar, this many people attended, this many people engaged, and so that's a success. I think that we would find a bunch of false positives if we went that approach. That would be an easier approach, but I think it would not get us where we ultimately want to go, given the other goals we have for policy and advocacy this year. So that's why we're using the approach that we're doing. Perhaps by September 1st, we could have a public-facing platform that engages not only our community but the entire Georgia constituency about how to engage effectively at the polls, since this is an election year. But that will really be the end of year emphasis. And if we don't fully get to that point, we won't beat ourselves up about it because the lift already is going to be pretty heavy. To make a point about personality, I wanted to use the example. I've been using seniors versus freshmen, but in a more familiar term, it may be good to talk about someone like Tony Stark in the Avenger universe as opposed to a Peter Parker, right? Right? We have Tony Starks already in our community, but we're not hoping to engage them. That is not the mission of our program. Instead, we're looking for the Peter Parkers. And what we're hoping to be able to do is encourage them, some of the quiet, small voices, people who may not always engage, who may not always be talking, who may not have the loudest presence or personality. We're trying to get them to engage and hopefully get them to engage not only as they go, as they live their lives, but also to take certain initiatives to engage on a social media platform, right? So if we can find someone who can take their personal advocacy to those platforms, then we will consider that to be a huge win. As we begin to wrap this up, right, the philosophy behind advocacy that I'm using is the opposite of the bull in the china shop. And so Most people think the effective advocates are the people who are the alpha personalities, who are always speaking and always calling attention to themselves. I grew up in a household where that model of advocacy was practiced, right? If someone tried to infringe on my dad's power, he would not only effectively claim his space, but he would humiliate the person who attempted to cut him off, and then make a model, make an example of them, right? Humiliate them, embarrass them, right? So I grew up using that model. And even though that was my personality, I adopted it as my advocacy personality. But over time, I discovered that I didn't like that lifestyle. Even before I knew how to shift that model, I decided that I needed to shift it. So that's what our program is going to be doing instead. And so what we're using, as I conclude, is a more holistic version of advocacy that is healthy, that comes from a place of value, of wholeness and wellness, that emphasizes listening over speaking. And that's it. Thank you so much for paying attention, and I'm looking forward to working with each of you. Have a great day.